The great scene, and one of the great scenes in the movie is, you like a pie? You know,
yeah, you like a pie?
You know, like
I bring a 9.
I bring a 9. Well, here's the 9 pies. I did not order it. You asked for the pies. You asked for these pies. You know.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Grande Bouffe.
The big feast.
As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week. And this week, we are honored to have Mr. Neil Rosen.
Yay!
Hi, Neil.
And the Emmy-winning, multi-Emmy winning.
Now, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. New York one, former New York one.
You were with New York one for 20 years?
24 years.
Wow. That's a good run, Neil.
Then they sold the company, and they just got rid of everybody. So just a few weeks ago.
Boston.
I know. And I have a really good, my show is really good, this Talking Pictures Roundtable Critic show that I do.
I know, I love that show.
And I'm trying to bring it somewhere else.
Yeah.
The show did not get canceled because the ratings were good.
Yeah.
And it was also a revenue earner for the company because we championed movies that are on demand that most people were not aware of, as opposed to most people go on demand and they go like, oh, La La Land, or oh, Moonlight, Twilight, or Harry Potter, or get Guardians of the Galaxy. But there's hundreds of movies there that they just don't know the titles. So we were championing these independent films, which had decent stars, good directors, and people would rent those films based on what we were saying. So I'm looking to bring it somewhere else, and my hope is that I succeed in doing that.
That's such a great model because people have access to all this and they have no idea. Maybe you're subscribing to a thing, or you have like on demand, and you don't know the name. You might not know the director, and then for people to curate it is a huge boon.
Yeah, we'd watch 10 movies a week. Some of them were just terrible, but most of them were. But yeah, we'd find the little nuggets,
the gems,
exactly, and we would kind of talk about them, and then you could even see that, how the movie would all of a sudden get traction. And, we had no vested interest in it. We were just recommending movies that we liked. And so the show we're looking for another place for the show, Talking Pictures, but we live on in a podcast. It used to be an after-show podcast. Now it's just a podcast.
Yeah.
If the show comes back on the TV on the air again, then it will become an after-show podcast again. But it's called Sitting Around Talking Movies. Sitting Around Talking Movies. And you can Google that, or you can find it on iTunes, or you can go to blogtalkradio.com. That's all one word, blogtalkradio.com, and just put in Sitting Around Talking Movies. And we have a Facebook account and a Twitter account that's SA Talking Movies, and it's basically the TV show, except it's the podcast version.
How many episodes have you done?
We've been doing it for a few years already.
Yeah.
And we just...
do you do it every week?
We do it every week.
Great.
Yeah, we missed a few weeks after the TV show was canceled because we were all kind of in shock. But now we're back. We taped one today, and we talked about the show being canceled, and we talked about how we're looking to bring it somewhere else. And
did you talk about any movies?
Yeah, we talked about a couple of movies today. We usually talk about the movies that are the movies that we do on the show, but there is no TV show. And we also talk about whatever the major theatrical releases of the week. So we talked about Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and I don't know, one or two other of my panelists were talking about a couple. I think the Richard Gere movie we spoke about that's just out there now, where I don't know what I forgot the name of it.
I don't know Richard
The
Gere.
Dinner. It's called The Dinner, and we talked about that. But essentially, this was a post-mortem show, where most of the bulk of that podcast was talking about, hey, we're back, we're still here, and we're looking to go somewhere else. In the meantime, here we are.
Post-mortem, that seems to ring a bell with our film choice that you've brought us.
I smell
yes,
a
that's
segue.
true. That's true. You told me to pick a movie, Cole, and, I didn't pick The Godfather or, Singing in the Rain or just, something like, or Pulp Fiction. I tried to take something a little, not obscure, but something that I just love tremendously.
Written and directed by Mr. Albert Brooks.
A genius.
The great Albert Brooks.
A genius, a comedic genius.
Did you ever interview him?
The movie is Defending Your Life.
Yeah, Defending Your Life with the great Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep and Rip Torn.
Yeah, Rip Torn's amazing.
Yes, I not only did I interviewed, I have a few Albert Brooks stories. And,
oh, good. Tell one.
First of all, at a junket for one of his movies, I don't remember which one it was, but we had struck up a pretty decent relationship because I was, when I've interviewed everybody, and when you interview somebody and you really, really love their work, it's hard not to like you back because I feel very strongly about. Most of the movies you interview somebody and you're like, it's kind of perfunctory. It's like, you talk about the movie. But if I'm really in love with a film, as I am with Defending Your Life, and Lost in America also, another Albert Brooks film, I'm a big champion of his work, I bring that across to him. So we became, he liked me as an interviewer. So the funny story with Albert was I was interviewing him for a movie, and my daughter was in preschool. She was like 4 years old, and my wife was supposed to pick her up, but something happened. Nothing bad, but my wife got stuck, and she just couldn't pick up my kid. And my kid was going to be just waiting there with nobody, and I had this interview to do with Albert Brooks. And we were hanging out in the hospitality suite, which is, you do these things in hotels, and Albert was there. And I said, I have this dilemma. I need to interview you, but the setup's not going to be ready for like another 40 minutes, and and he's like, I've got the Paramount limo outside. Take the limo. Just take it. Go pick up your daughter. Come back. And literally, I went out and I took Albert Brooks' Paramount Pictures limo, picked my daughter up, dropped her off, at my wife, and came back with that limo and did the junket. So that was pretty interesting. That was a nice Albert Brooks favor.
What a great guy.
Yeah, really nice. And I've been a fan of Albert Brooks's work. I mean, all the way back to when he used to do The Tonight Show and he was doing stand-up comedy, and then he did short films for SNL, which are also. I mean, I think the guy. There's one thing to do comedy. There's one thing to do comedy, and there's one thing to do comedy where there's a whole layer of real intelligence underneath it. And to talk about this movie, Defending Your Life. It's not just a comedy to me, and it is really hilarious. I mean, Shirley MacLaine's in it. There's a lot of people in it. But there's also there's a whole layer of, if you look underneath it, of he's really telling you what he believes will happen in the afterlife, and also what is valued in the afterlife, like how you could move on to from purgatory, which is where he is, from heaven, or there's no hell.
Judgment
City.
City.
You have to go live your life again, and it's all based on the amount of fear that you've had in your life. And I just find that to be really just an interesting concept. And
I think it's interesting because the climax of the movie or the anti-climax, I suppose, of the film revolves around this meeting with Meryl Streep's character that he's fallen in love with, and it's a nice twist that they have at the end. Yeah, well,
what's funny about it is, Albert's character in this particular movie. By the way, here's another thing about this movie. He's in Judgment City, and he's being judged whether or not he gets to move on to the next level, or whether he has to go back and repeat.
Learn his lessons.
Buddhist.
Right. It's like, yes, it is. He's defending his life, and his attorney to defend his life is Rip Torn. And Rip Torn, who I've also interviewed, told me that he got the part on the Larry Sanders Show.
Oh, I didn't know the chronology, because he's basically just Artie.
Playing Artie on the Larry Sanders Show due to the role that he did in Defending Your Life.
This was first, and then based on this,
so Gary Shandling saw that particular performance and said this guy would be perfect to be Artie. Because if you look at Rip Torn's work prior to Defending Your Life, there was nothing in it that really would denote that he would be good at this particular role. But the character in Defending Your Life and the character Artie, they're very similar characters. I think Gary probably, and I've interviewed him too, Gary probably said, just do the same kind of guy that you did on in Defending Your Life. And it is the same, where he's just kind of this patronizing guy, well, we'll just take care of that, and then on Larry Sanders, it's like, would you like a lovely kiwi platter? Well, so
it's a guy who is lying to you to make you feel good, and that's what you want, is someone who is willing to lie to you. You don't need to believe him. You just, if someone would go to the effort to, say some bullshit to you.
That's correct. Well, there's a great scene, and there's so many great scenes in Defending Your Life. One of the ones that's terrific is, so Albert is being defended by Rip Torn, and for the prosecution, it's Lee Grant, and
there's some bad blood between Rip Torn and Lee Grant from their former escapades, so that we're not really privy to, but we know that they've happened.
Right. So one day, it's like a 3 or 4 day trial, and one day, excuse me, one day Rip Torn doesn't show up for a reason, and there's a substitute lawyer in there, played by Buck Henry.
Henry, yeah.
And he just doesn't say a word, And
it's a really strange twist in the film.
Doesn't have a lot of impact.
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of impact.
Very funny
but
he doesn't say anything, and he goes. And they meet beforehand, and he goes, yes, whatever the character of Rip Torn was like, he won't be here today. I'll be taking his place, but don't worry, I'm very good at what I do.
Yeah.
And he doesn't speak the whole time. And
Albert Brooks is wearing, what do they have a name for the
tupa, I think.
Tupa. And Brooks is going commando. I mean, there's a scene when he's walking down the hall with Rip Torn, and it's too much information. You could tell that he was really into the role.
I didn't notice that, Cole.
But Buck Henry doesn't say anything, and Lee Grant's...
You're a better man than me, Mike.
Lee Grant's ripping him apart, and then Buck Henry's given a choice to speak, and he goes, no, we have nothing at this time. So he goes, oh, you are good, and you didn't want to toot your own horn. It's just very, very, very funny. I also like there's a scene in a nightclub where everybody's talking about how they died because it's kind of purgatory, and so
with the stand-up comic.
The stand-up comic goes, how did you all die? And Albert Brooks yells out on stage like you.
Yeah.
It's very funny, but I can watch that movie. To me, the mark of a good movie is a movie that you can watch over and over and over and over again. And movies that just come on TV on Showtime or HBO, and wherever they are in the middle of the movie, I just stop on a dime and I watch.
Well, this is one of those movies. I've mentioned it to a few friends, and people go, "Oh yeah, I love that movie. I know that movie."
To me, I feel like it's having
1991.
some sort of a resurgence, because I had not heard of this movie, and then I've heard it brought up 10 times in the past month.
Really?
Yeah, maybe because it's on HBO right now. Maybe
is it?
It is. Yeah, I watched it on HBO Go. Maybe that's just introducing it to a new generation. Yeah. But I was gonna bring up in general. I think Albert Brooks is a bit, and I hate to say this, forgotten by people who are younger. Where it's kind of doing. In starring and directing these movies, it's a bit of a Woody Allen thing.
Yes. He went the Woody Allen route of the auteur route of writing, starring, and directing in his own movies. But I think Albert got tired. He told me once that if you go to a studio in Los Angeles and you look out in the parking lot and there's 200 cars in the parking lot, because every one of those people in those cars is trying to somehow stop you from making your movie. And I think he got tired of hustling around and trying to raise money for making the movies. So now he just acts in movies, and he's been in a bunch of movies.
Well, he was in Drive.
I loved him in Drive.
And he was in Judd Apatow's This Is 40, I believe he was in that.
Oh, right.
He crops up in a lot of movies, but he's not, writing them anymore, But
I liked him in his unstereotypical role, dramatic role in Drive.
Yeah.
He was the bad guy. He was the big villain.
Right. It was not a typical Albert Brooks kind of performance.
Not at all. And he was great.
Yeah. It was a very different kind of role, He has a big following on Twitter, though, if you like Albert Brooks.
Oh, yeah?
He writes funny... Yeah, he has a lot of followers, and he just writes little funny...
I think that he made this movie because it was a roundabout way to kiss Meryl Streep.
That's funny.
Because...
I talked to Meryl Streep about the movie, too,
Yeah, what did she say?
She said she read the script and thought it was very funny, and she just wanted to do it because, Meryl Streep really isn't known for comedies, if you think about it. And she just said she thought this was great, and she just said, I want to do it. You know?
The kiss is a big deal in the movie.
Yeah. Well, I love how Meryl Streep gets, she's... The way the movie works is if you've lived your life without a lot of fear, you are judged with less days. How many days are you looking at? Apparently Albert Brooks had a lot of fear in his life, the character, and he has many days that they're looking at.
9 days.
I thought it was 11.
No, it's 9.
In the course of his trial, where Meryl only had a few days.
I thought that the trial had to go on for 9 days too. It felt like it was there for a
in
while.
this unbelievable 5-star type hotel. Did you get I love the chocolate swans that they put under my pillow. No, I didn't get that. And he's kind of like
and she's like
in a crappy motel.
Yeah, I know. She's got a jacuzzi in her room.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, "How's your jacuzzi?" And he's like, "You're what?" And she's like, "I think my tub just has holes in it."
Right. Well, Albert said it took him a long, long time to create that whole concept of Judgment City. And then, this was not a multi-million-dollar. I mean, this is not a big budget film.
Not at all.
And you had to create the place. So.
Right.
It's not like a Steven Spielberg thing where money is no object, and there was no CGI back then, really, when they made the film. So, it was a tough trick to pull off. But to me, I'd rather see a movie. I always say that I'd rather see a movie with a low budget movie with a great script and a good cast than a big budget movie, with all these great effects and special effects and CGI. Where sadly that's the case with a lot of movies today. They're not spending money on the script, and to me, I don't really care. It seems to me so much movie making today is we'll do this car chase scene and then we'll blow up 20 cars and then we'll shoot the thing into outer space and we could. But I've seen movies that start out with the movie starts out for the first 15 minutes there's a car chase, and I don't know who the characters are. I don't even know who to root for, so I'm not invested in anything that's going on the screen.
Well, it's the direction that Hollywood has gone, and I think it's terrible. I think it's just so bankrupt. I personally have given up on Hollywood. I don't think that there's any future for Hollywood. I think that they've painted themselves into a corner.
It's all Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I can't. I refuse to see any.
What's that new Harry Potter? Then they're gonna make 3 of those
superhero movies. I can't see them. I refuse
agree
to watch
with basically all of this, but I will say I will see every Fast and the Furious movie. Fast and the Furious movie.
Fast and the Furious. You're a fan? Yeah. See, I'm just. To me,
it's about family.
I'm more about my favorite period of movies is the late 60s, early 70s, and the late 30s, early 40s. And in both of those eras, you find films that are just really about screenwriting. I mean, screenwriting is just great and great direction, and I just don't really care about.
The early 30s were especially great because that was when sound had just come in the door, and everybody was taking advantage of it.
Well, those are interesting because they're transition periods when the corporations were a bit out of control, and there was less censorship. The 30s, late 30s, early 40s. That's the code is just sort of being applied, right? It's being
the Hays Code. No, the Hays Code came in by the late 30s, early 40s. Sound was already if you look at the Jazz Singer, which was not really the first sound film, and it's actually half sound and half silent, but it was the first commercially successful sound film after other attempts that didn't really.
And that's 1929, right?
That's 20. I think it's 27.
Okay.
But by the late 30s already, they had perfected sound. If you look at those early sound films in the early 30s, the characters weren't moving around much. The actors were kind of locked into. They'd hide a microphone in a plant on a table, and they didn't really
singing in the rain. Bits about that.
But by the late 30s, early 40s, they kind of had sound down. And there's just, this is the era when Citizen Kane was made and, all those great Frank Capra movies. And, Billy Wilder was churning out movies at that particular time. There's just great, great movies. And, you could say what you want about the studio system and the moguls that ran them in the back in the day. But they did appreciate the merits of screenwriting and how important that was.
Absolutely.
Whereas today, you will find exceptions, but generally speaking, on a big, like you said, you're giving up on Hollywood. I don't know if you said it.
Yeah,
Cole,
I said it. Yeah.
Yeah, but for the most part, summer movie season is just dreadful. It's just like the new Spider-Man. And
there hasn't been a good movie out of Hollywood so far this year. And now we're moving into blockbuster season. You know what that means? There isn't.
Tell me some good Hollywood movies, Hollywood studio movies. I'm not talking about
Well, this is the first year that I can remember where it isn't a Hollywood movie opening the Cannes Film Festival. There are no big Hollywood movies at Cannes this year.
What is opening the Cannes Film Festival? It's not a Hollywood movie.
That's the thing is, it's all foreign. It's all foreign and independent stuff.
Yeah, it's sad. It's Hollywood is. I don't know. Well, everything changed. It's all about opening weekends. It's all about just getting people into the theater on opening weekends. But I think digitally things are changing now with on demand and streaming. I wonder if there was always a sort of a platform of like we'll open it theatrically and then we'll put it on DVD.
There's a system. There used to be a sort of pattern.
I think it's all changing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've heard this argument since I was a kid that the movie theaters were going to go away. That,
right.
First of all, preceding my time, when television first came out, and this is before I was born, they said, well, that's the end of movies.
The Jack Warners of the world were shitting their pants.
Yeah, and if you look at the Last Picture Show, certainly a lot of movies did go away. Movie houses did go away, but movie houses still survived. Then I remember when I was around as a kid, I would see they would have signs on movie houses saying "Stop Pay Cable," like HBO. They thought that was going to be the end of movie theaters, and movie theaters continued. So they're always saying that the movie theaters are going to go away, but I truly wonder now if they will go away because...
well, we've lost a lot in New York. We've lost the Beekman, which I never thought would go away. What a beautiful little cinema that was.
I know, and the Ziegfeld is gone.
That's unbelievable.
And the Sutton Theater, I don't know if you remember that. That was a great theater. That's gone. So, on 3rd Avenue in New York City, there used to be... Across the street from Bloomingdale's, there was Cinema 1 and 2, which is now still there, Cinema 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But next to it, there was the Baronet and the Carnet, and that's gone. And then around the corner, there were like a few movie theaters off on 59th Street. Those aren't there. And then down the street on 3rd Avenue, there was a ton of movie theaters. Now, it's just,
it's a model that interests me in terms of distribution is there's ways now where a film can, if it gains an audience in like Cincinnati and enough people like demonstrate by like voting or whatever online, it'll come to a theater in Cincinnati. Like they basically show it's like, yeah, we're interested in it, bring it here, as opposed to just movies having to raise all this capital to make all these prints and to take it everywhere. Now if you can just prove that you have an audience, they will go and they'll show it in an actual theater space. And I think that is like, one of these sort of like tech disrupt kind of like models that can actually improve cinema.
Yeah, well, it's an angle, that's for sure. And they're opening up. I mean, I've gotten rid of cable recently, and I've got a 75-inch wall.
Talk to a millennial. They don't have cable. They don't even have TVs.
No.
But they know all the shows. They watch them on Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, or Amazon Prime.
That's where I'm at. And Filmstruck, which I got.
So you get it on Apple TV or a Google Stick or
I've got the Fire Stick, the one that you can talk into. Yeah.
Or you can even on a DVD player or smart. They have those apps on there. But people are just stopping to pay their cable bills, which are exorbitant in prices.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We were talking about Time Warner and Spectrum. I've had Time Warner for years, and when Spectrum took over, I noticed that my bill went up from about $145, $150 a month to over $200 a month, and I said, "That's it. I'm done."
Yeah. Where are you getting your internet service from?
See, that's the thing. I'm still stuck spending $80 a month for
so
landline.
You're still using Spectrum for your internet service.
Yeah, that's right. Which is horrible. Which has gotten worse since Spectrum took over.
But you're not using it for But you cut the cable TV cord.
That's right.
Yeah. A lot of people are doing that. And if you're looking at news, you can get that online. You can get that through apps and the shows. Yeah, with that Fire Stick or Apple TV, you could get it too. So
and also, Filmstruck is amazing. Are you familiar with Filmstruck?
No.
It's a combined effort with
Turner
Classic Movies, Criterion. They also have a lot of Kino Lorber stuff, and it's phenomenal. It's really great.
What's it called?
It's called Filmstruck.
Filmstruck. Okay, I'll check that out. But
why do you guys think, like, we were talking about theaters actually haven't gone away, and it seems like cable is almost at risk. From your years of being film lovers and interviewing so many people who love it, what's your take on, like, what is the specialness of seeing a movie, like, in a theater?
The Ziegfeld Theater, which was in Manhattan, where they used to have all the premieres, there's just something really special about seeing a movie on that huge screen I saw Lawrence of Arabia there. I saw, many movies there, and I remember the experience as much as the movie.
I do too. I saw Letters from Iwo Jima there, and I remember it very.
Yeah, I mean, like I
distinctly.
literally can think of certain movies that I've seen there where it's like the movie was enhanced. Yeah, look, a bad movie's a bad movie, but there are movies where I'll only watch this at the Ziegfeld. If I'm going to see this movie again, I only want to see it at the Ziegfeld, and it's hard to explain why unless you've seen a movie in the Ziegfeld.
Sure, and if you had seen 2001: A Space Odyssey,
I saw that at the Ziegfeld, and I said to myself, that's one of those movies.
Yeah.
I'll only see it again at that particular theater.
Yeah.
So and I did see it at that theater because it adds an experience unto the movie you're going. There's the experience of watching the movie, and then there's that theater adds to the experience. It's the sound, it's the screen, it's the way the theater's laid out. Listen, I grew up, excuse me, in Pelham Parkway, which is in the northern Bronx near City Island. And there was a movie theater on the Grand Concourse called the Lowe's Paradise. And that's a whole different kind of movie-going experience. That was one of what you call the Grand Palaces. You would go in there before the movie started. There were clouds on the ceiling, and as the movie progressed, it would turn into nighttime, and there would be little stars, and it was projection. It was like a movie on the ceiling of the thing. It would be like you were
Never heard of this. Wow.
Yeah, and it was all this like Rococo, Baroque art and statues and gaudy stuff. But as a kid, you walk in this thing and you just, like, they were called movie palaces.
Right.
They don't build things like that anymore. They really don't.
No, but I mean,
that's still around.
So it's like theaters exist, but they're just turning into like really like the reclining chairs.
Well,
and
that's
like, people
kind of
bring you
cool too. I
food,
saw the movie Brooklyn with the Saoirse
Yes.
Ronan, Emery Cohen movie,
right?
At Cinema One, actually, and I sat in one of those chairs, like it's a Barca lounger chair, and I like that. But you don't have to see Brooklyn in a theater. You could see that, if you have a big television screen. But I like the experience. To me, the communal aspect.
I was bringing about the other people.
The communal aspect of seeing a movie in a theater with other people, with strangers.
Well, there's also something
and
to be
laughing at a comedy
there's also
together.
Something to be said for. I remember the Beekman. Walk. It was on. Was it on Second?
66th Street and Second Avenue.
Second
it's
Avenue.
The scene in Annie Hall, actually, where
where they're standing on line.
You're Alvy Singer from the Johnny Carson.
That's right in front of the the Beekman, and you could be walking down Second Avenue and just think, oh, I think I want to see a movie.
Right.
And that place, it felt like you were just coasting right into it because of the way the ramp slid down into the cinema. And that's a New York thing. You walk down the street and you just stumble into a movie.
Well, I'm a native New Yorker, and there used to be all these revival before VHS cassettes were around, but it wasn't. There used to be just revival houses and these theaters like the Regency on the West Side, and they would just be like it'd be a week of William Wyler films or something, and you would just go in and and it wasn't like now where you could just go on Netflix or you can just look up anything and Look, I had seen The Wizard of Oz to answer your question. I'd seen The Wizard of Oz every year as a kid on TV, and then one year it was playing. I believe it was at the Regency. They had The Wizard of Oz, and I saw the same movie that I had seen. I don't know. I can't even tell you how many times on a big screen in a movie theater with a full audience. And that was just a different experience of how to experience the movie.
Absolutely.
Which is how exactly that movie was meant to be seen. I mean, when it was made in 1939, there was no television. That movie was made to be seen in a theater with an audience.
And you're literally missing like a third of it, pan and scan on the
crop
TV.
it. Yeah.
Well, and also with the quad, they spent over $1 million renovating the quad. I haven't been there since the renovation, but I hear that's great. So there are places.
I think
in
movie
New York
theaters will always. I don't think there'll ever be a time when there are no movie theaters.
I certainly hope not.
I think that people want to see Avatar when the new Avatar comes out.
No one's asking for that. That's gonna be such a fucking disaster.
Yeah, but just like the Star Wars films, these aren't the films that I cherish, by the way. But they certainly have their fan base, and I believe that people will they'll stand online all night and they'll want to see it on the screen, and they'll do that platform thing that I taught. The only way to see it is to see it in a movie theater for the first couple of months, and so I think there'll always be that, and people will want to go to the movies. What are we doing tonight? Let's go to the movies. Take a date to the movies, or let's. But
and and now there's movie theaters where you can drink beer.
Oh yeah, they got the food and the food. There's a.
I like the idea of being able to.
Well, there's a restaurant movie theater. It's like dinner theater
and drink good beer while I'm watching my.
While we're on it,
movie.
I grabbed us
Oh yeah, Mike, what did you find for us?
So I walked in to the Whole Foods thinking that I needed something to match the film we watched, and immediately saw some people floating in the clouds, and it's called BFF, which I assume is Best Friends Forever, literally, from Grimm Brewery. Grimm Brewery, coming out of Sterling, Virginia, not far from where I'm from. And it is a 9% Tripel India Pale Ale. Am I saying that right? Triple?
What do you say?
Tripel. You're the...
Tripel?
Tripel.
India.
Tripel. It's not triple.
Yeah, but
No,
like they're floating.
very
This
close.
is very apropos to defending your life. They're all floating.
They're literally best friends forever.
That's right.
It's a little platonic.
Literally forever, because it seems like they're
They're in heaven or
afterlife.
something.
Kind of reminds me of the Heaven Can Wait.
The Warren Beatty.
Yeah, the Warren Beatty. This movie had a little bit of that same kind of. We're in the cloud. We're out of the.
What did you guys think of
the living realm?
I felt like I learned a lot about Albert Brooks in his view of if you could be in close to heaven, what it would be all the food you could eat and you don't get fat. It's all these kind of cutesy.
Well, that's the great scene. And one of the great scenes in the movie is you like a pie?
Yeah, you like a pie?
I
bring a 9.
I bring 9. Well, here's the 9 pies. I did not order it. You asked for the pies. You asked for these pies. You like a pie.
Yeah, the character actor who plays the waiter is great.
He's great. And it's no. So you distinctly told me you wanted a 9 pies.
Yeah, and this is all happening in front of
the prosecutor,
the prosecuting attorney.
What did you think of Brooks's character before he died? What were we supposed to think of? He's just a real corporate-y schmuck.
He's a schmuck. I was going to say he's like a schmuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think schmuck is the first thing.
Yeah. Well, they show you a montage when he's dead of some stupid. There's a great scene where they go, "Here's a montage of things." That are just that he's done in his life that where he didn't really do them that well, or they're just plain idiotic, and you could see his life. I mean, they sell him a clunker car, and they're laughing behind his back, and just all the. He was a schmucky guy,
He got divorced and got wiped out, and then took a trip to
cattle
to Hong Kong.
He didn't want to invest in Seiko watches. He invested in cattle.
Oh,
yeah. So it's the through line about what the afterlife is judging you on, and again, I think it tells you a lot about Albert Brooks, and you connect so much with this. So I'm interested if you feel similarly. The biggest thing is to not be a coward. That is really ultimately what it seems like this place is judging you on. Is did you act courageously in your life or not? And Meryl Streep just flying colors, running into houses, saving the cat.
Right, exactly.
He doesn't stack up as well.
No. There's the one where he rehearses asking his boss for a raise, and then when he actually gets in there, he just caves.
He just caves immediately, so quick you can't believe.
Yeah,
he can't even blink.
He's like nothing under 65, nothing under 65, and the boss is 47.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So what do you think that says about him at the end when he still hasn't learned anything? Evidently, he's dyed in the wool. I guess coward or just not somebody.
But he gets to move on because
he's not going to seize the day.
He does seize the day
finally.
Right, because he takes the risk.
Even with nothing to gain, seemingly he risks it for love. You know what I think is fascinating about this vision of the afterlife? You kind of build this into the script. She just died. She just lost everything, and she was married. But there's some line about how I think they make you not so upset about it.
Right.
She should be in mourning.
Well, no, that's actually addressed. To me, this is why this is such a terrific film in all aspects. It's just the perfect movie. Even that is addressed.
Right.
He says to her at one point. Yeah, she goes, I slipped on by the pool and I fell and he goes, but yet you feel all right. She goes, you everything's all right. Like for whatever it is, it's like you just feel all right. It's like you're in this other place and you're just right. Everybody's just all right, you know.
It's a very specific image of, and it's not heaven. It's something like purgatory, but not really, because you're not working it off. He's really developed a thing that I don't know if has like too many parallels.
Had you ever seen the movie before?
No, I'd never seen it.
Had you ever seen
No,
it?
no.
It's the first time you saw the movie?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Did you like the movie?
I did. I thought, but it kind of, yeah, I get what you're saying, Mike. It's like it's kind of an old folks' home.
Well, there's literally, it's mostly old people, because most of the people who die, let's be honest, are old.
Did you like the movie?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was like real weird. Like I thought it was like very like
Well, it
90s specific, but like also just like Albert Brooks is like a fascinating weird mind, and this is kind of him like running amok with a budget to see like what his afterlife would be, and I find that really fascinating.
Did you like the Hall of Past Lives Pavilion? When they see all the lives that you've had, you know, and you see some like really big fat tough guy, and he's a little girl combing the hair of a doll, and it's like, where's Mumsy or something, and he's in the guy's what's this?
Yeah, it's bordering on the surreal there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in that movie, really a lot, and. Yeah, look, it's not like heaven, hell, and purgatory. It's like Albert Brooks's vision or concept of what happens when you die is that you go to this place, which they say they've created to make it, again, it was the 90s, so it doesn't look like Earth, the United States now.
But they do hang a lampshade on it. They're explaining why it is the way it is.
Right, they said we're making it look, you know, like we're putting as many convenient, you know, while you're staying here, while you're being judged, Judgment City, we're going to try to make it look and feel as comfortable as possible to the surroundings that you know and you're comfortable in. And, you know, I mean, Rip Torn goes at one point, you know, like when he doesn't show up for that trial that I was talking about for that day, he goes, where were you? He goes, you wouldn't understand if I told you. He goes, try me. I was in the third ring of something or other. You know, it's just... Right, it's a whole bizarre universe, but you're not really seeing that universe. You're seeing this fake Earth recreation of 1990s, it was a contemporary of Earth that they have created for these people.
Right.
You know, who knows where they're going to go and what's going to happen afterwards, but they've created this fake thing, like a set, you know, while you're there to make it seem, you know.
Well, my favorite Rip Torn movie is
Man Who Fell to Earth.
I do like that one.
Yeah.
That's a great one. But comedy, I would say Freddy Got Fingered.
Oh, hell.
I do like him in Dodgeball.
Dodgeball.
If you could
but see,
throw
I
a
think
wrench,
Freddy
you
Got
could-
Fingered is funnier than Dodgeball.
I never saw Freddy Got Fingered.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
No, I never did.
Oh, I highly recommend it.
It's a hidden gem.
It really is a hidden gem. It's sad that's the movie that tanked Tom Green's career for many moons.
Tom Green, what is he doing now?
He does stand up.
He runs a brewery.
And
Is that true?
I don't think he runs a brewery, but he has a beer. He has his own beer, and he does a lot of stand up. Travels around doing stand up.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah, but he lost his mojo after
He was doing an
Freddy Got
online
Fingered.
show for a long time. He kind of like was doing a web version of a talk show.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Is that still happening? We don't know.
I don't know. I barely knew it was happening when it was happening. But other things about this movie, it's like it's extraordinarily specific, and also is trying to make the most universal big story with like the materials he has. It reminds me of a Woody Allen movie that reminds me of its most like Sleeper. You know that one?
Sleeper is a great movie.
I love that one.
I love that movie.
That to me feels like it's like, all right, like Woody Allen, what's the future like? And he describes a whole bunch, and they're like, yeah, okay, but you only have $2.5 million, and he's like, all right, so I'll rewrite it a little bit. And this kind of feels like that to me. Is like, you can't show Rip Torn in the third circle, the house against circle, like, you know, but you can have him talk about it and allude to these like grander things, but it has this like groundedness in the reality that you have to work with and that like you're familiar with.
That's very true. It's very true. Sleeper is a great movie, by the way. That's just
I love that one.
that's a great movie.
Those are my favorite Woody Allen's. The like Bananas, Sleeper, like
Everything you always want to know about sex.
everyone knows about sex. Take the money and run.
That's actually my favorite Woody Allen comedy. And we talked earlier about seeing things in theaters. I remember going into that theater and I missed the first minute and a half. I've seen the movie many times, but I remember.
Wait, which one are we
walking
talking
into
about? I just had too much beer. I just now had.
Tell
Which
them the
one are
movie.
you talking about?
Everything you always wanted to know about sex, but were afraid to ask.
But anyway, the movie, and it was the first Woody. I think it was the first Woody Allen movie I ever saw, and the audience. I walked into this theater with my friend, and the audience was just laughing their ass off. It was like rocking the place, the laughter. And I remember that, Sure. So these are theater experiences that you just wouldn't get, if I had seen the movie. It came on, cable, and I.
You guys seen? I never hear about Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy. Do you know that one?
Yeah, I know all of them. That one's okay.
I like that one.
Well, I like. In the early period, I like the ones that you mentioned. Take the Money and Run is a very good one in the early period. The middle period,
that's his first, right?
It's his
first feature.
It's his. Well, he.
What about? I think what's up?
He did a
What's Up, Tiger Lily?
Which is really not his. He just took an old movie and dubbed it with. But the first movie where he's in the starring role that he wrote and directed is Take the Money and Run.
And then, but Casino Royale.
Right, but he didn't write that. He didn't direct that. That was he's
in it. Yeah,
right.
What a fucking weird.
That's a terrible movie.
You
should tell it's the original Casino Royale.
Yeah,
not the Daniel Craig.
Before they sold to UA the rights to the Ian Fleming books, they did a one-off James Bond movie.
It was the only one that Albert R. Broccoli did not have the rights to apparently at that particular time, so somebody was able to capitalize in it. But they made it a sort of a wacky comedy with David Niven, and it just
did not work.
It's a great asterisk in cinema history. I feel like
it's a very weird movie, but. Yeah, in the middle period of Woody Allen, I love Annie Hall. In the later period, not even the later period, the third period, I like this. For 4 periods, I love Bullets Over Broadway, Mighty Aphrodite, and
Broadway, Danny Rose.
That's a very good one too. I like. Man, there's so many of them. What is the name of this one? It's the one where he takes a hooker to a Deconstructing Harry. Deconstructing Harry is very good, and of late. I think that Blue Jasmine is terrific.
I don't know. For me, I think Woody Allen should have stopped making movies about 15 years ago.
Really?
I think Mighty Aphrodite stands up. I really like that movie, and I think that's probably one of the last good ones that he made.
Do you like Bullets?
It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, everything's subjective. I used to have a radio show on many years ago on WABC Radio. And it was a call-in movie show. It was like sports talk radio, except it was movie talk radio,
Right.
And people would call up and they would say, "Yeah, I hated that movie. How could you like that movie?"
Right.
And I'd say,
It's all very subjective.
or vice versa. They'd say, "You bashed that movie. You said it was, I love that movie." And I would say, "I'm great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm not denying you your.
Of course.
I'm not going to try to tell you that you're wrong for liking the movie.
No.
I mean, if you love." Batman versus Superman, which I thought sucked.
You're wrong, but if you like it, you're wrong.
Yeah, but right, exactly. But if you think, wow, that's a great movie, and I think it's an awful movie, I mean, good for you.
Yeah,
you enjoyed yourself. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Sure, absolutely.
Here's a question I've had forever: is criticism different than saying I liked it? And I've watched a lot of movies, but you're entitled to your opinion. Is it something else? Does everyone have equal say? And we were like, well, I subjectively enjoyed it, so you can go screw yourself if you didn't like it. Is coming at it with a critical eye and trying to defend it in some way, is that different than the argument of just well, I had a good time, so stop crapping on this movie?
Well, why don't you've been reviewing films forever. Why don't you address it, and then I'll address that.
Sure.
Talk some shit on Toy Story movies right now.
Yeah.
You don't like the Toy Story movies?
I was the first negative review for Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3, I cried with my daughter at the end of Toy Story 3.
Yeah, just because you cried.
Cole, Cole. Give yourself credit, Cole. You were the first negative review of any Toy Story movie ever.
All right.
Well, that's true. But just because a movie makes you cry doesn't mean it's a good movie.
That's true. That's why when I walk out of a movie at the end of a movie and they say, well, what'd you think? How many apples? Because I review movies with apples.
Yeah.
On a 4-apple scale, and I say I can't. I have to get away from the movie before I could review it.
I agree, and I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to hear anybody.
I'm still under the spell of the movie,
right.
And they could have some really manipulative nonsense at the end of the movie that gets me a little choked up, and that precise second at the end of the movie, I walk out and I'm like, wow, that. But then you get away from it for like an hour and you go like, yeah, that movie was awful, and yeah, they just kind of just manipulated me to get
there
like
you go.
little,
It's like,
There
there's
you go.
people in the subway you can be like, hello, everybody. Like, that guy could make me cry, but he might be full of shit.
So
And,
you got to get away from the movie.
You gotta get away
As far
from
to
it.
answer your question, well, you were going to answer it
No,
first.
go ahead. We'll
All right. Well, I'm going to say that, I think with any movie critic, generally speaking, first of all, there's the mass thing where like there are movies where like 99% of the critics hate the movie, like Hudson Hawk, and pretty much if everybody hates the movie, you'll know. I bet you this is a pretty bad movie for the mass public. But other than that, I think you watch a critic and you follow a critic and you get to know their writing style or broadcast style
And their taste.
and you kind of know, like, yeah, I kind of agree with this person, or I don't agree with, but I know where this person's where their stance is on this.
Yeah, what their barometer is.
Yeah, so I think you just kind of get to know a critic, and you follow a critic that you kind of like, and even if you like, for example, Janet Maslin and Vincent Canby at one particular point were the two critics for the New York Times. Almost all the reviews, I would agree with Janet Maslin, and I would completely disagree with Vincent Canby. His sense of humor and my sense of humor were polar opposites. So, there's no real right or wrong, but I think there's an academic studied background to it. I mean, I'm coming at this, I studied in college. I studied film and journalism. I mean, when I was younger, I used to get this question a lot. I don't get it anymore. Like, what makes you a critic? What makes your opinion? Like that. I was always getting that question. I don't get that anymore. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I guess just from this experience alone, nobody asks me that. But yeah, I studied film and communications and journalism and English in college, and I know film really, really well. And I never claimed to know, as I said before, I never claimed to, say that there's a right or wrong to this. But I think I'm coming at it from, a
very informed
an
place.
informed opinion.
Yeah, sure.
I'll tell you that the direction is bad, and I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you that it was shot really poorly, and I'll tell you why, and I don't think those are really arguable. I mean, I think that if I tell you the movie, the cinematography was really terrible, or the acting was really terrible, I think those are kind of factual, I mean,
Yeah.
You could argue on the acting, well, it was intentionally bad. It was supposed to be camp. I mean, you could make that argument.
Right.
But you could, look at certain aspects of the movie that are not that debatable. The editing was terrible.
Is the filmmaker achieving the ostensible goal that they seem to be, trying to achieve?
This is a question about art in general. Is like, well,
do you read the book? I see some people go like they're able to see that the filmmaker bring out the true qualities of the book if it's based on a book.
Yeah,
do you read the book?
No,
I don't read
think
the
they're
books.
completely different medium.
I don't like to read books before I see
No,
movies.
I
like
agree.
to approach the movie. I don't want to be prejudiced when I
agree.
go in there. I want to approach
agree.
it like if
I mean, we just did Roman Polanski's Test.
I was about to bring it up.
a couple weeks ago.
There's a movie.
which it's one of my favorite literary adaptations at all. I've never read the novel, but as far as I'm concerned, I know that story in a very indelible way that I appreciate for every second that I spent watching that movie.
One thing that's good about it is it makes me want to read the book. And from people who have read it, they're kind of like, skip it. Whereas with the movie, I'm like, you gotta see this movie. But what I would, dollars to donuts is, I would say that the big moments that you take away from the book, which is 500 pages, are the scenes that weeks later I can't get out of my mind. And Polanski's a genius at that, of taking those moments but then making them cinematic and finding how to translate that into visual and auditory experience where it was written words, so that the translation thing is tricky, but make it a movie,
Yeah, well, that's the fault of a lot of adaptations where you say to yourself, yeah, he didn't really, this really didn't, he wasn't really, it's probably worked better as a book. We were just doing a movie a few months ago. I forget the author, but I wish I could think of the name of the author or the movie, but nobody ever can translate it's the guy that, it's the author that wrote, It's Philip Roth. Nobody could. It's very hard to adapt a Philip Roth novel. It's also very hard to adapt a Joseph Heller novel, if you think about it. These are things that are just.
Catch-22 is a weird movie.
It's really a read thing. You got to read it, and you read the narrative, and it's just hard to interpret certain books. They're better as books, you know.
What did you think of Paul Thomas Anderson's adaptation of Notorious Vice? Did you see that?
Yeah, the Joaquin Phoenix
Inherent
movie.
Vice.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
The Joaquin Phoenix movie. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that movie at all.
I hated that movie.
Yeah, so did I. I hated it.
Because it's like
so wrong-headed.
But I never read the book, but I hated the movie.
Yeah.
it's
I agree.
I was not involved in. I could care less about the fate of any of the characters on the screen, and I was lost in it. And I didn't know what was going on.
I'm gonna get shit for that. But the number one thing that is a tell to me, if I'm not aware that it's based on a novel, is story structure more than anything else. Is that it's like, this is a very strange way to write a screenplay. And I think that's interesting that there is a freedom that like novels have in terms of chronology.
Novels tend to be 5-act structure, and film is always 3-act structure. Almost, 99% 3-act structure. Obviously, Polanski is dealing more with a 5-act structure in that movie, but yeah, they're at odds. The novelistic form and the cinematic form are different.
Yeah, they are very different. But, there are books that are better as movies, and there are movies that the books are better,
Bridges of Madison County. What a terrible book. What a great movie.
Great movie. It's funny that you mentioned that. I was talking at work a few months ago about that the book was bad.
The book is just awful.
And that the movie is just sensational.
Well, the epitome is
how's the play? I never saw the musical on Broadway.
I never saw it.
The epitome is The Godfather, right? Like, by all
Better
accounts,
movie.
it's
Better
just
movie.
like a pulpy, like sex-filled kind of like nonsense thing. It's
The book.
The book's not the Godfather of books,
And
it's not.
the movie's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And 2 is a masterpiece.
Absolutely.
2, I mean, I could argue that 2 is even better than 1 in some regards.
I agree.
Both masterpiece of cinema. Yeah, and you look at the source material of the original, right? It is not the Godfather of books. The Godfather.
No one's like, what's your favorite book? And like, The Godfather.
Right, that's true.
Like, you can pretend you're enlightened in film if you say The Godfather's
Well,
favorite
Coppola,
movie.
did you watch? There was a thing recently. They had the reunion at.
Is it 45 years or 50 years? I can't remember.
It was 45. I think it's 45 years.
Yeah, I think it's 45.
And they had the reunion at Radio City Music Hall with a lot of the surviving cast members, and
Right.
Coppola was there. He directed it, and he said it is not a good book. He goes, it was not a good book, and he wrote the screenplay with Mario Puzo, who wrote the book. So
and also you had Robert Evans, if you hear
Right.
his side of the story.
Oh, he made the whole movie.
But Coppola, well, yeah.
Well, he certainly made it longer.
Well, Coppola just said point blank that what he thought of the novel, and it was like not complimentary.
What I had heard is that Puzo would probably have agreed with that, and that it wasn't the best Puzo book, but that it was
a
the
popular
most
book.
commercially successful of his books.
But it was a very popular book before it was a movie. Everybody was reading that book. Apparently, it was like a #1 best-selling book.
It's like the Da Vinci Code of its time, something like that.
I don't know. Well, there's a movie I'm not thrilled with.
Yeah, it's not like the Da Vinci Code is the Godfather of movies.
I didn't read that book, but I didn't like the movie, and I did not see any of the follow-ups. There's 2 follow-ups.
You know what's crazy? Like, they just came out with one, and they didn't highlight that it was a sequel, and they didn't highlight that Ron Howard directed it. They were just trying to sell Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that something?
And what's her name from the Stephen Hawking movie? They were just like,
Yeah.
it's a movie about ancient stuff. You'll love it. It's great. It's like.
And wasn't it the 3rd movie?
Yeah.
Of that same guy.
I find that fascinating.
What are those? The second. I can't remember the names of the other 2.
I can't either.
It's Inferno.
Yeah.
And, Da Vinci Code, Inferno, and I don't know.
You're right. You wouldn't even know that it was. Right, part of that same character. Right, that shows you how little interest there is in that.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
So here's a movie that came out of Hollywood that I think is terrible. Talking about books, is what's it called? The one with Melanie Griffith's daughter, and it's just awful. the bondage thing.
Oh, 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, and then they just had the 50 Shades Darker.
Tippi Hedren's her grandmother, and
yeah. Well, those are awful movies, and I haven't.
No, they're
read,
terrible.
My wife read the book.
They are like.
Good for you.
I only saw the first one, but it's like it's a bad
Awful.
movie that gives you a really weird feeling, and like it makes reality.
I think it's like a Showgirls. I think it's the kind of movie that you can watch just to put it on and just laugh at it.
So much rather watch Showgirls
for
camp
its
value.
unintentional camp value.
It's awful.
It's terrible. Secretary is a masterpiece. 50 Shades is a dog.
Yeah, well, the same theme. One done well and one done terribly.
Well, let me loop back a little bit in terms of like. Directors being a bit forgotten. I don't want to harp on it, but like I don't think I'm 27, and I don't think many people my age honestly know who Albert Brooks is, which I think is a shame. But
if you don't know who Albert Brooks is, you should watch Lost in America. You should watch Modern Romance, and you should watch Defending Your Life.
I'll throw in Broadcast News in there too.
Right. He didn't write and direct.
He didn't write and direct it, but he's fantastic in it, and he's a very Albert Brooksy
unforgettable
character.
in the movie. I mean, he's an Albert Brooks character. I think James L. Brooks, who directed that movie,
not related,
right? Not related. Wrote that with. I don't know if he wrote it, but yes, it's a very Albert Brooks type of part. But
and can I talk about what kind of character that Albert Brooks thing is? Because it's a nebbish, you know, like it's a cut of
Jewish
the Woody,
neurotic Woody Allen.
It's a cut of the Woody Allen thing, but there is something more self-aware of his sort of shittiness that makes it a much more like noble character. I feel like where
well, he has a confidence. He has a confidence about his nebbishness.
He is. There's something more manly, but then I think there's also something like, Woody hasn't.
He's not as nebbishy looking as Woody Allen.
He's not as nebbishy looking.
Woody's got the big, thick, dark frame glasses, and he's plays that up. It's his character, you know.
He's taller. I'll give him that. You know,
and you know, although Woody has cast himself with some beautiful leading ladies, so I'm saying. What I was about to say doesn't make sense. I'm saying you could buy that Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep would be a couple. But then Woody Allen cast himself with Diane Keaton, cast himself with other beautiful women along the way also, you know. So
Muriel Hemingway and whatnot. But
yeah, that's true, Muriel Hemingway.
I mean, it's just life. But I think it's
yeah, well, that took on a whole different take once reality, you look at Manhattan in a whole different light. After news came out.
So we'll say it's like if you like Woody Allen and you want to leave the issues aside, check out Albert Brooks.
Check out Albert Brooks. That's true.
All right. Well, I want to thank our guest this week, Neil Rosen. We're going to miss you. I personally was really heartbroken.
You were heartbroken.
Yeah, I believe
I was crushed.
I'm sure you were. You had a good long run, and I appreciated every minute of it. And your podcast is
Sitting Around Talking Movies. Sitting Around Talking Movies. Go to Blog Talk Radio, or just Google it. It's on iTunes, and you can listen to it. And
Google it.
And you know, I know you miss me, and I appreciate that, Cole, very much. It's only been a few weeks. I do not, and we have the podcast, but I do not plan on just, you know, becoming a fisherman.
No, don't throw in the towel.
You know,
when does
your
what day of the week does your podcast drop?
Usually it drops on either Thursday or Friday. We tape it on a Wednesday.
Okay.
But we got a guy, Bill Bergoli, who does the show with us, and he's the one who puts it up. So, you know, if he puts it up, it's usually Thursday or Friday he puts it up. Sometimes it comes out Wednesday night, but generally Thursday or Friday.
Okay.
But my plan is to get back on television somewhere, you know, and certainly bring the show.
Damn straight.
Bring the show. There's a lot more options now. I mean, when I got into the business, you know, but there were only television stations. That was it, and radio stations. But now there's streaming services, and there's there's digital platforms. I mean, I could even, if I found a sponsor, I could even do my roundtable show and just put it up on YouTube, on a YouTube channel or a Facebook Live channel, and have it sponsored. So it's not like in the old days when the only way you could do something is if you got a television executive to say, okay, we'll put this show on the air. That, of course, is my goal, because that's where it was, and it's easier to just go into a studio and have it done and use their editing facilities and for post, you know. But yeah, I'm not planning on. I mean, somewhere, whether it's profitable or not, time will tell. But ultimately, I will bring this back. This show, which has a devout following, Talking Pictures, and I mean the tweets that I was getting from people. I'm going through withdrawal. Neil, bring back the show. I can't take this. My Saturdays aren't the same. It just really made me feel really great.
All right, well, you got to go out there, wrangle another big fish, and then we'll have you back on the show, and we'll discuss all of your great success.
That's a deal. That's a deal.
Thank you all so much for listening. Remember to please turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, riding a bicycle, or watching a movie.
Certainly watching a movie.